He said that if you use the army right now, there will be an immediate regime change. No.
Nobody tells me you don't know. I mean, nobody knows. There may be some and there may not be. It would be good if we could do without it, but sometimes it's necessary to go through with it. We, when you look at what you see, have the largest army in the world. There's nothing like it. I'd love not to have to use it, but sometimes you have to. We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens, says the President of the United States. We're keeping track. We're following all the comments that Donald Trump is making, whether it's on Air Force One, when he lands, when he arrives at the White House, when he gets to Mar-a-Lago, when he posts it online through Truth Social. All his statements on the Iran issue are being updated right here, still live, so stay tuned. We're here commenting on what's happening. Not only reactions about the Iran issue, but he also has other comments. Let's listen to what he also said about Cuba while we're on the topic. Let's hear it.
The Cuban government is talking with us. They are in serious trouble. As you know, they have no money. They have nothing right now, but they are talking with us. And maybe we'll have a friendly takeover of Cuba.
¿Por qué?
Very well. We might end up having a friendly takeover of Cuba.
¿Prisioneros?
We could. Well, let's look at Trump's reaction. The reactions that Trump has had have been changing. We're negotiating. We want the regime to change. We want a reform. It's a constant change. What doesn't change is everything that's still missing from the Einstein case documents. A case in which the last report, the latest data, showed that there was a minor victim at the time, someone underage, who supposedly filed a complaint against Trump himself back in the 80s. Well, all those documents are currently missing, and while they're fighting with Iran, with Cuba, declassifying UFOs, the documents just don't show up. See? And there are more and more accusations, not only against Republicans, but against Republicans and Democrats, and against a lot of other people, even leaders in other parts of the world. Pay attention to this topic, because this coming week, next week, some very interesting things are coming in this case. But also, let me tell you what's happening in these images that you can see. Listen to this. According to reports, for the first time in a long time in Russia, this signal hadn't been heard. In Moscow specifically, the missile alert hadn't been heard on a massive scale. At airports in different areas, including Moscow, Orenburg Airport, Kazan Airport, Olenovosk Airport, Saratov, Penza, and other cities, landings have been reported. They have had restrictions, or in some cases they haven't even been allowed to fly. Because they are seeing the war they themselves started with Ukraine getting closer and closer to their own territory. It's a topic that's being observed daily and becoming increasingly clear. Another issue that also draws attention is the statement from Bill Clinton himself, and what has broken the silence that this person had maintained on that topic, right? Here is part of the official statement from former President Bill Clinton. And we're also going to the images, the new images, and what they reveal about 3 and Atlas. By the way, today we'll talk to you about that and other very interesting topics as well. There's an impressive artificial intelligence development that has to do with life itself, but we'll tell you about it today. First, let's go with what's happening with this Clinton, because obviously, well, it was expected that statements would be made. First, the previous public statement to this document is 2 pages that are published before entering the hearing with Congress. The former president has appeared before a Congressional Oversight Committee and denies any knowledge of crimes committed by that person. He defended Hillary Clinton and claimed he didn't see anything wrong at the time he met Jeffrey Epstein. He said that if he had known anything back then that is now known, he himself would have gone against Epstein. Clinton opened up about it. He talked about several topics, for example, his lightning, According to what he says, he has always tried to contribute to defending the victims. That, well, he says, and insists that there must be justice and that all those involved must be thoroughly investigated. He claimed to have had a limited relationship, he says, with Epstein in the past. He maintained that it ended years before the crimes came to public light. He claimed that he never had any knowledge of criminal activities, that he never witnessed anything illegal. He claims he saw nothing and did nothing wrong, establishing a clear defense. He also defended Hillary Clinton, stating that she had nothing to do with Epstein anymore, that she never met him or traveled with him. He also criticized the decision to include Hillary in the subpoenas or hearings, calling it simply wrong. Amid all of this, within what has been discussed, Clinton made an appearance that, although it was behind closed doors, he requested to be public and broadcast, something I wouldn't want. He stated that he was completely unaware of the crimes committed by this financier. And in his at least statement, so far it was reported that they confirmed he had traveled at least 27 times on Epstein's private plane called the Lolita Express. He maintains that he never visited the island of Earl St. James. And well, what has been published in the documents, at least so far, is that dozens of times there was an exchange of emails. This issue is escalating to levels that, well, maybe weren't expected. The point is that there is more and more evidence that those involved would be from both parties, and we need to know exactly what happened with Clinton, what happened with Trump, which is the most mentioned name, by the way, in the documents, Trump's name, and so we need to know exactly what happened. According to the chairman of the committee, whose name is James Comer, he avoided directly requesting Trump's appearance. And he added that the current president never had anything to do with it, he says. He never said anything that made me think he was involved, he says James Comer. But wait a moment. So, the most mentioned character who boarded the plane? How could he not be invited to testify? He will have to be invited to testify at some point, the only one. The only thing that could save Trump from having to testify is if at some point a psychological or mental problem is declared. Strong, right? The only one is like the one his father ended up having. Other than that, as long as he's in his right mind, sooner or later he's going to have to testify. Whether it's now as president or later, but it's going to be his turn. Another thing that also draws attention is what's happening with the 13 Atlas and the new images that, well, the Luis probe once again surprises us in a very interesting way. Present. Look, well, this is one of the images from the 13 Atlas that has surprised people the most, especially because of what the information reveals. According to what has been discovered, this probe, the Luis mission, a mission that, by the way, is heading to Jupiter. Do you remember that at the time this probe was the closest, let's say, of any human-made object, the closest that got to 13 behind at that time? Approximately 60-something kilometers, millions of kilometers from the comet or from object 13 Atlas. But at the moment when the mission was happening, Luis, at that moment, even though it has many tools, it has a camera, it has everything, they said, the antenna isn't there, it's not raised until after the sun passes, because the antenna itself also went away. It forms a kind of shield, or the antenna is both an antenna and a shield. So, the antenna, when it passes by the sun, becomes a shield, and when it stops passing by the sun, there's a set date, it will start to open, and when it opens, it will send the complete signals about how this whole project is. The distance from the sun to the earth is called an astronomical unit distance. That's what they call it. An astronomical unit distance, it's the distance from the sun to the earth. To measure things, right? How many astronomical unit is that? Well, it's 5 astronomical unit. Well, the distance from the sun to the earth times 5. In this case, the distance between the probe and the comet was 0.44 astronomical unit. So, more or less than half the distance from the earth to the sun. This image was taken from that distance. What we're seeing here, along with a series of tools that help us understand a little more about what this phenomenon is about, and also to confirm some of the oddities that Avi Loeb had already reported. The European Space Agency published this image, a new image of 3 satellites, which was captured on November 6th, but at that time it couldn't be shown. As I explained, it's because of the sun issue. They had said that in February this image was going to be released, it was going to be sent to Earth, and in fact February is already coming to an end. We were waiting for this image, and finally, today, Loeb himself published it. Now, your thoughts on the images. There are 120 images. Today they're going to report this one, but they're going to be publishing more images. The photograph was taken by the Janus camera aboard the Jupiter Icy Moon Explorer mission. That was when the object was closest to that probe, at 66 million kilometers. What's striking is that you can see the gas jets there, which clearly seem to be coming out in the direction opposite to the sun. Something that needed to be confirmed from another angle. The fact that now in the calculation, look, maybe you can't see it here, but look, here it is. So we can get our bearings. Where is the sun? Well, and where is the movement? Well, if you notice, where is the sun? It's in front. Yes, the sun is actually over there coming this way. The sun comes from there to here, and these lines go out toward the sun. These are the famous anti-tails, as they call them. Under normal conditions, they say no, and look, the curious thing is, the surface ice gets heated by sunlight. The jets should initially point toward the sun at first, where the reaction from the comet happens, or as the sun gets closer, or the comet gets closer to the sun, it reacts with the chemicals and causes the first explosion, let's say, of reaction. But immediately after, that micro-antitail, which forms for a few hours or days, gets dispersed by the solar winds and ends up on the opposite side of the sun. That's normal. That's what happens with all comets and all that, not now. There had been a case of an anti-tail that lasted several days, and it was surprising. The anti-tail lasted about 4 or 5 days, around that. On this occasion, the anti-tail continued the whole time. The whole time it passed by the sun, the anti-tails were pointing toward the star. Yes, pointing, and as the sun kept changing, the anti-tails kept changing too, and turning and rotating toward where the sun was. That's really unusual. He has published 120 images for us. Not all are public yet, but they will be. Instruments such as MAGES, submillimeter wave instrument PEP-UBS, among others, participated, which collects spectroscopic data and particles, or a particle detection tool. That information hasn't been given either. Because this could clarify the elements that make up this object. Part of the tail, those microparticles get close to where this object is exactly. So that will be super interesting. To confirm this as well, the yellow arrow, according to what the image reports, indicates the direction in which the solar winds are going. If the sun is back there and the direction goes toward the comet and the solar winds do to it what the wind does to Juarez, in other words, they don't move anything at all. The anti-tails, how do they stay in place? Well, that's the big question so far. The anomaly is visible in the brightness contours around the nucleus, and the amount of energy or light coming from the object was also surprising. The object has an estimated diameter. This new important data provides more information to be uploaded. 2.6 kilometers, they believe that would be the nucleus. 2.6 kilometers. But this adds to recent data from Hubble, from the Space Telescope, which suggests it would be much larger than Oumuamua and Borisov. In other words, just the nucleus measures 2.6 kilometers. I'm sure they'll report it. The astrophysicist Avi Loeb, known for having a much more open stance toward different, let's say, possibilities. He assures that by March there will be more information, since over there at Jupiter, where this object will pass in March, and March is just around the corner, it's waiting for it there. The probe is called, this one is Juno, Luis, that's the one we're talking about right now, and Juno is the one that's at Jupiter. There was even talk or speculation about the idea of intercepting the object, meaning making Juno observe it. Loeb even suggested that Juno could have been used to intercept the object if there was enough fuel in Juno. This sparked debate among astrophysicists. Not everyone agreed that Juno should be used to intercept and approach the comet. Meanwhile, over time, Loeb also shifted his view and admitted it was complicated to consider that. To begin with, because it doesn't have enough fuel and it would be almost impossible, and also because he says that he's waiting. And I think that's something that other astrophysicists have also mentioned. He expects that in the very near future, in the coming months or years, more objects will keep coming out from the same area where this one came from, this one, says Atlas. Above all, considering that we humans now have more tools, we already have more tools to observe that area, and it's possible that we can detect objects that maybe we couldn't before. What this image confirms is that the comet does indeed have this very rare, very strange activity. That it has a geometry, one we'd seen before. Do you remember it? The one that appeared to be around 160 degrees. He says, well, that geometry is released. What seemed to have that geometry at the time was because of the angle we had with this image, which is a different angle. The geometry is no longer as it was once thought. That's why it was so important to have a different angle. Hey, what happened with the geometry? Well, like with everything that's millions of kilometers away, it's very easy for there to be mistakes too. That's why they wanted to have this information beforehand, but it wasn't possible, right? Observatories like Rubin, the Argus Observatory, and others have already been reporting hundreds of objects that could potentially be interstellar. So, are we talking about maybe opening a new one? Like a new chapter in astronomy, where these objects can be observed more thoroughly and we can understand why they are so rare. Even so, there are many effects, many phenomena that were also confirmed to be strange. Their speed, the antitail. And now, there is no doubt that the antitail is there. It stayed for, well, it remains, but it stayed for months. Above all, the strangest thing is that it remained close to the sun. Well, let's move on to other matters, because there are several more things to discuss. Well, are these images of more fire still appearing? This time, the spokesperson for the Tehran Fire Department stated that the fire in the southeast broke out in a warehouse of raw materials, mainly in a factory, supposedly a shoe factory. That's the place that caught fire. Well, one of the places that caught fire. This one was on the outskirts of Iran. Another place that has also faced these challenges in the last few hours. We've already talked about several, including some explosions. There's also the message from Pahlavi, the message she sends, Pahlavi prays. But look, the message she gives is one in which she assures, look, notice who's next to her. All of them are leaders of different clans in Iran. Yes, what? It turns out that there are several clans that aren't that aren't happy at all with the Ayatollahs. But they also didn't get along with the previous one. So Shah says no, well, to switch from the Ayatollah and now get involved with the Shah, well, that's just great. We don't want that. The Turks always had problems with the Shah, and so did different clans. So, what Pahlavi says is, let's see. First, we're going to get rid of these people, the Ayatollahs, but at the same time, we're going to make agreements. We're going to get along. So he sent a message of unity among different clans, and that's essential. It was important for that to be done. And well, there's an interesting topic. The full video is a bit long, but I'm going to read to you what he himself posted on his Twitter account. There it is, yes, it says the following. We are also relatives, and our family is the great family of Iran. We are committed to eradicating all discrimination in a unified and democratic Iran under the rule of law and the flag of the lion and the sun. To guarantee individual freedoms and equality among citizens before the law, we stand for freedom and will continue to pursue it, as well as security, says of Iran. Well, that's the message he's giving. Something I think was necessary to hear. So, what do you think and what do you want to do? How do you see things? Let's see, we're talking. Well, that's how it is now, but whether it will be like that in the future, we don't know, right? But at least it sounds less terrible than what I know, than what we've experienced in these past years. It's a huge issue, not just a vision, but more towards a different future. Another thing that also draws attention in what's happening is what the same person has said. The same Secretariat of Foreign Affairs, as well as the United States Embassy, the United Kingdom Embassy, the Chinese Embassy, and also embassies from Latin American countries have reacted. There are already starting to be reactions. Look at this. This was just sent to me by Daiso, whom I send my warm regards to. He sent it to me about 8 or 9 minutes ago. I'm not sure if he's watching the broadcast. Thank you, Ada, and my regards. The Secretariat of Foreign Affairs says, the official page reports that it continues to closely monitor the situation developing in the Middle East region. It urges Mexican citizens to avoid traveling to Iran and Israel. Given the current circumstances, the staff of the Embassy of Mexico in Iran is in contact, is where it is, with the Mexican nationals who are in that country. They are expressing their desire to remain in Iran. So the people who live in Iran who are Mexican say no, that they want to stay. Well, likewise, the Embassy of Mexico in Israel is in contact with nationals in the country and local authorities. So far, no requests for consular assistance have been received. Is everything calm? To the population in those countries, we recommend following your classes, instructions from local authorities. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs reiterates the phone numbers of our embassies for cases requiring consular assistance or protection. And down below is the information. The phone number of the Embassy of Mexico in Iran and the Embassy of Israel in Mexico at this Embassy of Mexico in Israel. Well, there it is. It's also posted on the website. There it is. All the numbers are there. There they are. So, well, it's also important to take it into consideration. Isn't this interesting? Obviously it is. There's another topic I'd like to discuss before we move on to comments. A project was carried out with an artificial intelligence to see how possible it was to create life from scratch, from the point of view of its conception of life and the information it has about life. So this analysis research was done, and honestly it was very surprising. Yes, the ability of this AI to understand what life is was surprising. It's an experiment that was done at Lund University and Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. They managed to use artificial intelligence to develop functional eyes without even having prior instructions. Keep in mind, it didn't have instructions on how to do it. The AI itself developed the natural concept of an eye, for example. The team from Lund University, together with Massachusetts Institute of Technology, achieved what seemed like science fiction. An artificial intelligence developed digital life from scratch, from zero, without instructions or anything. They said the challenge was radical, extremely difficult. It won't be able to do it. How is it going to do this? How is it going to reach those conclusions? To be able to say, let's see, does life itself have to arise in this way or in another way? By the way, the study was published in Science, the journal Science, in case you want to check it out, right? What confirms the finding and the fact that it was published in Science is that this has already been reviewed by other scientists in different parts of the world. And they said, this is truly amazing, we have to publish it. It was about introducing what they call virtual organisms, completely blind, into a digital environment and seeing if, under evolutionary pressure, they would develop complex structures to create an eye in a living being that didn't have one. Imagine the first living beings that didn't have eyes and how they evolved to have them. So the AI does it, it goes through the whole process and succeeds. There were no instructions on how to create them, there was no previous model, there was only code, random variations, and digital natural selection. Generation after generation, the system selected the most efficient configurations to survive, replicating the Darwinian principle in a computational environment. The surprising thing is that, little by little, structures that were sensitive to light began to emerge as the evolutionary cycles went by. From a digital point of view, Professor Dan Erik Nilsson explained that the process mimicked real biological patterns, even though the environment was extremely simplified. During the simulations, configurations comparable to scattered photoreceptors, camera-type eyes, and compound eyes appeared, all without the AI receiving specific instructions on how it should build the visual system. Well, honestly, it's mind-blowing. Why is it important? Well, in the end, it's everything. This reinforces how evolution happens through simulation and how this will help us, for example, to reach other conclusions about human development or a medication or whatever we want to develop. It could also revolutionize the field of biotechnology, robotics, and adaptive engineering. For them at least, it's a turning point when it comes to artificial intelligence and biology. Those who are studying biology, who are interested in the subject, natural sciences in general, medicine, and so on. Also veterinary medicine, since this is a field that will surely be very interesting. What is it? A huge greeting to Sol Garcia, Eliseo, Marcela, Alejandro Valvidia, and to the whole community watching us live, watching us on television. Thank you very much. We hope you'll leave us a comment there with your cell phone, right? Great. Jose Francisco, how have you been? Jose Francisco Marcos, Jose Francisco Argos Puente, big greetings. How are you? Veronica de la Cruz. Very good greetings. Awesome. What's up? Eliseo Freire Marcela, Alejandro Marcela, Mortino. How have you been? Tino, Francisco Arce. How have you been? Greetings. The astronomical unit, right? Exactly. Francisco Josefina, sorry. How have you been? Greetings. Very good. To the Charlotte Creos community. Fernando, how have you been? Awesome. Well, to the whole community, a big greeting. Hope you're all doing very well. We'll be back in a little while with another update. Just a moment. See you later.